Maryland basketball lands another big commit.
You are Locked On Terps, your daily podcast on the Maryland Terps, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, everyone? I'm Tre Moore, host of Locked On Terps, pro Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So thank you guys for making us part of your day. And today's episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money and use code Locked On College at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. Maryland basketball and coach Buzz Williams pick up a new big commit that I think is really intriguing and one of the more interesting prospects that Maryland basketball has had in really a while now. And I'm really excited to see how this player plays. I'm really excited to see what kind of player this guy becomes because I just checked out his highlights. I just checked out kind of what he's about. I think he's really going to it's kind of a mystery commit just because of based off of where he's from and everything. So I'm sure you guys have seen it, but Maryland has picked up a new commit from this kid. I don't really know how to pronounce the first name. It's like Guillermo or Guillermo Del Pino. So I'll just stick with the last parts of his name. I'll stick with the Del Pino part is what I'm going to call him. And he's a 2025 guard who is actually a prospect from Spain that Buzz Williams just committed in the 2025 class. So there's a bunch of different things I want to talk about with this. But one thing is I'm going to talk a little bit about it a little bit in the second segment, but Buzz Williams is doing a really good job with recruiting. I really like the guys he's getting. He's going all over the place for it. It's not just DMV kids. It's not just local kids. It's not just East Coast kids. Like Buzz Williams is all over the map in terms of where he's getting guys from, in terms of where he's pulling from. And that's really awesome to see because I thought Kevin Willard did a really good job at DMV recruiting and getting guys in the area, but I didn't know if he was great kind of getting guys from all over the place and getting guys from out of the country like this Del Pino kid is. And Buzz Williams is proving that he's able to do that. And I think this commitment for Buzz Williams is going to prove to be actually a really big one that can really help the Terps. And I really like this kid's game. But yes, so this kid is kind of mysterious because he's not in high school basketball. He's been playing in Spain. And so there's a lot of different interesting things that come with this. But I think that it's a really interesting pickup from Buzz Williams. You don't normally get guys like this. And most of your team is going to be guys that are your normal, went through high school, whatever. You guys kind of get it. Your normal type of high school experience kids that had a really good high school and played really well in AAU and are really talented and whatever the case is. We haven't had too many guys that played in like a Spain league and that has done a lot of different things in across the country. And that's exactly what Del Pino has done in terms of him as a player. So there are a lot of question marks kind of what he actually is because you get all these recruiting websites like 247, On3, Rivals, who do a really thorough job of evaluating these high school prospects, of evaluating these guys that are in America and the United States, and they do a really good job with that. But we just don't hear much about the players that are from out of the country when they come to play college basketball, unless they're like some huge name that like is obviously going to be a top 10, 15, 20 pick in the NBA. You might hear about that kid. But other than that, there's a lot of kind of unknown guys that come in, and some of them end up working out really well and end up being some of the better players in college basketball, and some of them end up not working out well. But it's the same exact thing with high school players. It's really no different, but you do get kind of a new flavor. You get a new type of player when you get a guy like this that hasn't played high school basketball, but instead has been playing in Spain. And so last season, he played in the FEB league, and so he did some really good things there. He averaged 10 points a game, 2.3 rebounds, and 1.4 assists in 22 games. And then in 7 games, which I think is a really big part of this that I think is interesting, in 2024, in the FIBA U17 Basketball World Cup, where a bunch of countries compete in, Pino averaged 11 points, 2 rebounds, and 2.3 assists. So he did some really good things in that. And then in 2023, for the FIBA U16 team, he was the Basketball World Cup MVP, averaging 14.6 points, 1.4 rebounds, and 2.9 assists. So he's done it at a FIBA level. He's done it at a pretty high level at FIBA, and he's proven that he's been a pretty good player at the FIBA level, and he's the 10th commit for the Maryland's class. So I'll talk about that in the second segment, but we're getting up there in terms of numbers, and we're starting to kind of have an entire team for this Maryland basketball team. So I think Buzz Williams did a really good job of getting a bunch of different types of players, but we'll talk about that more in the next segment. But like I said, he's translated, he's played well in the FIBA level, which is really important. That's some of the best guys at your age in the world that you're playing against, whether it's the USA team, whether it's the Canada team, whatever team it is in FIBA. That's a lot of the really good teams that you're going to end up playing, and that those are some of the best young kids in the world that he ended up playing with. And U16 got the MVP, which is really big. So that shows a lot about kind of who he is as a player, who his game is. But there's still a lot of unknown. We're just not sure exactly how a kid like this translates. We don't know exactly how good he's going to be. We have no idea how he kind of compares to the level of play right now that's in college basketball. I just don't know. I'll tell you that. I don't know. But I do think that there is a ceiling there where he potentially could end up actually being maybe one of the best guards on our team. Like, I think that could end up happening. We're looking at this kid and we're like, oh, he's one of the best guards in the Big Ten. It also could be a thing where he redshirts next year and he doesn't even play. Like, I think there's a huge variance in kind of what we expect from this kid. But if Buzz Williams wanted him, I have a lot of trust that he's going to end up being good. I think the main thing for me is he has to end up filling out his frame. He's 6'4", 155 pounds, it says. Listed on the article I'm reading. He might be a little bit bigger by that now, but still a little bit bigger by that. You still got to add some weight. Even if he's added like 10 pounds, you still want to play heavier than 165 if you're a college guard. You probably want to get up to 180, I'll say. Maybe even depending on who you are, but maybe a guy like that can play at like a 180 and he can be a little bit stronger, a little bit more sturdy, which I think could really help him and end up developing his game and end up being a really good player for Maryland basketball. And so I did check out some of his highlights because I was curious. I was like, okay, let me get a visual. Let me get an eye representation of kind of what he's actually going to be. Let my eye test, which isn't perfect, but I feel like I have a pretty good eye test in being able to tell kind of what kids' games are like, what they're going to be good at, what they're going to be bad at. And I think the main thing about me is this kid's smooth. Really smooth player. That's kind of my number one description for how he plays the game. It's really smooth. He does a lot of different things. He has an interesting kind of layup package. Like, he does a lot of different things just smoothly. You know, the players that are just smooth, it looks a little bit effortless for them. They're able to do things effortlessly. That's kind of what I see when I watch Pino. Is a guy that can do a lot of stuff effortlessly. He has a smooth type of game, which I think is really fun to watch when you get some of these college guys, especially when they're from out of the country, that just have smooth games. Like, that's really cool to be able to see, because it's sometimes a little bit different from a lot of the Americans where it's more explosive and athletic based, where theirs is less athletic based but more skill and being smooth. Like when you think of a Luka Doncic type of player, it's like more closer to that. But this kid also is a good athlete. Like, when I watch him, he has bursts. Like, he's like, one time he's dribbled, he dribbles right by a guy. Like, he's got bursts. He's got some of that explosiveness downhill, and it's kind of sneaky. It sneaks up on you because you don't really expect it when you look at the kid. Like I said, 6'4", 155, but he has a quickness to him that when I watch the highlights, I kind of noticed. I was like, oh wow. You don't expect it, and all of a sudden he's by you. He's got kind of a quickness to him and explosiveness about him that I think is an underrated part of his game. that people don't really realize probably when watching his highlight. But I think he really has something there in terms of his athleticism. And as he gets stronger, that's only going to get better. And I think that's part of his game that will allow him to get to the rim, which I saw in his highlights. I saw repeatedly him being able to get to the rim, him having a layup package, be able to finish in different ways. That's kind of where that smoothness comes in as a player when I watch him. And then as well as kid can shoot. I think his jump shot's really pretty, to be honest. And that might be what I'm excited about most. When I watch the highlight, it's just one of those jump shots that just look right. It just looks like it's going in. It looks right. It looks smooth. Doesn't look like a bunch of mechanical issues. And I think that's some part of what you get sometimes when you get some of these Spanish guys. You get guys that can shoot, that have done a lot of skill work instead of a lot of games. High school guys in the United States, they played a lot of games. And some of these guys outside the country, they're really skill-based. They can do stuff that a lot of the Americans players can't do. And they might not be as good athletes out of the country, but they're just smooth games. They have a lot of skill. And this guy could shoot. And it was in different ways. He was pulling up in the mid-range, like quick pull-up games that are super translatable, and he can shoot the three-point shot, which is going to be translatable at any level. So I think his three-level scoring ability really excites me, because I love guys that can score on all three levels, because I think your potential as a scorer goes up so much when you can do it at all three levels. Whereas if you're a guy that can only score at one level, or a guy that can't shoot the three, then you really get slowed down offensively. Or if you're a guy that's not explosive enough to get to the rim, then you just become one-dimensional, and you're easier to guard, you're easier to game plan with, and your ceiling as a player just isn't going to be as high as somebody that can do these different things. And that's why I think this is a big commitment. I think he's smooth. I think he's got a handle. I think he has a different layup package. He can shoot the ball. We'll see how these things look at the actual college level. But when I watch his highlights, he really does look like he can do all those things. So I'm excited to see what Buzz Williams kind of molds him in. If he's a guy that can play right away, if he's a guy that redshirts right away, I really don't know. But I do think he's going to be an impact player down the road for Maryland basketball. And I think Buzz Williams wouldn't have brought him in unless he thought so too. So I do think that is going to be interesting. Maryland basketball's roster is getting closer to being done. What do the Terps need to do? What do I think about how Buzz Williams has gotten this roster to go? I'll talk about that next. Get the supplies you need from the site made for the skilled trades Supply House. Whether you're in plumbing, HVAC, or electrical work, Supply House is a reliable way to order products online. Their easy-to-use website is packed with helpful resources and the latest product info that help you get the job done right. Plus, with the complete inventory of over 200,000 parts from 400 plus top brands, you'll find exactly what you need delivered fast from coast to coast. Need help with an order? Supply House offers expert support and industry-leading service, so you'll always talk to a real person. And for trade pros looking for an extra edge, their free Trade Master program offers exclusive perks like dedicated phone line, free shipping, and discounts on every order. Thousands of skilled professionals are already taking advantage. Now it's your turn. Join the Trade Master program today at supplyhouse.com/TM and start ordering plumbing, HVAC, and electrical supplies with just a few clicks. Plus, use promo code SH5 for 5% off your first order. That's supplyhouse.com. So Maryland basketball's roster is actually starting to come together. Guys are starting to sign. Different things are happening. We just got that new commitment from Del Pino that I talked about. And I honestly think this roster is really starting to come together. And I really like how it's starting to look for Maryland basketball. I really like kind of how it's starting to go down, what the situation with the roster is, because I do think that we have a really solid roster that looks like it can compete in the Big Ten. It does. And first off, I want to say this. I think Buzz Williams has done a really good job with this roster. I think he's done a really good job of recruiting. I think he's done a really good job of bringing guys in. I think this roster is different from last year's, but that's okay. I think it's different in the terms of it's kind of that Michigan State mold from last year, and I've talked about this, where we don't have one or two stars. Like, we don't have a Derek Queen type of guy, or maybe even a Gillespie, but we have 10 guys that can go get you 10 a night that are going to be solid, that can be all around really solid Big Ten players. We might not have one or two stars and then a really solid starting lineup, but a drop off. But we might have a really balanced 8, 9, 10 guys that can all play, that can play at a pretty high level. I think that's what you're looking at with Maryland's current roster. And I do think that's exciting for Maryland basketball. And I think I really like how Buzz Williams has molded together. But now that we're up to 10 commits, I like where this roster is at. I do. I think they need to add one thing in particular, but I do really like what Buzz has done on this roster. And I have on the side on the right, I said Buzz's spin to the roster, because we can't forget this roster has come from zero. We didn't have a single player on this team. And for me, I thought this year might be not a throwaway year, but I just thought we wouldn't be the team that we were going to be under the Coach Buzz Williams era, or we were never going to get to where we quite wanted to be. And I honestly thought we just wouldn't be that good, is basically what I'm saying. I thought this roster was never going to get there. I thought Buzz Williams was going to have a lot of trouble as a guy that comes in and has to replace everybody. And I think Buzz has put a really good spin on this roster. I think it needs a little bit of work, but where it's at right now, I think we can compete to be in the tournament. I think we can compete to do a lot of different things. And I like this roster currently for Maryland basketball with the guys that we added, with the kind of where we're at with everything. I really do like it. First of all, I never thought we'd be able to get a 5-star recruit, and I feel like I haven't even been able to really think about this a ton. But I never thought we'd be able to get a kid like Darius Adams, the 5-star guard, top player in the 2025 class. I didn't think we were going to get anybody in the 2025 class, and now we have two guards that I find really interesting that I think are going to really help us in Darius and the Del Pino kid I just talked about. I never thought we would get 2025s, but we were able to do that under Coach Buzz Williams. I never thought we'd be able to get a 5-star. We were able to do that under Coach Buzz Williams. I never thought we were going to be able to get the amount of quality recruits that we have under Coach Buzz Williams, like getting guys like Pharrell Payne, Elijah Sanders, Miles Rice, Isaiah Watts. I really like those players, and I think they're really going to help us in the future. And I think they're going to be really solid for Maryland basketball. And I didn't know we were going to be able to get guys like this, and quality guys like this, and then depth pieces like David Coy, like George Turks, and like Andre Mills. I think that those two guys are going to, or I think George Turks and Andre Mills have really high ceilings, and we're not really sure what those guys can become. We don't know how good they're going to be. Redshirting last year at Texas A&M, but the fact that Coach Buzz Williams wanted those guys back speaks a lot about the kind of players that they probably are. That means they probably showed out in practice every day. He wouldn't want them here just because. So I think that's also really exciting. So, and then to have one of the better defenders in the country like Solomon Washington, I think this team is in a good spot to compete. I think there's a lot here. I think there's a lot of different guys. I think the biggest thing for me is big man play. I'm concerned with the lack of size and depth there. I think that's the one position we're going to want to add. We have Pharrell Payne. Elijah Sanders, I guess, is a 4. Solomon Washington's like a 3-4 type of guy. I think you have to bring in one or two other guys with size. I don't know. I guess you definitely have a couple of spots still remaining for scholarships, and I think Buzz Williams is going to be looking for big players. I think that's going to be a big thing for Coach Buzz Williams. But overall, I'm really pleased. And I think he's put a really good spin on this roster. And you look over at Villanova, and Buzz has done a better job than Kevin Willard. He has. And we're going to compare this for a while. I'm not going to do a whole segment probably comparing them, but I think he's done a better job in recruiting. And remember, Kevin Willard left Maryland because he thought he had more resources at a place like Villanova. And so Buzz Williams is kind of putting that to rest a little bit. So I do think he's putting together a really solid roster. And I like what Maryland's doing right now. And I think we're in a pretty good spot to be able to compete in the Big Ten. I'm not going to say we're going to win it. There's some really good teams in the Big Ten next year. But I do think we're in where we need to be with Coach Buzz Williams, maybe even ahead of where we want to be. Maryland football gets a big commitment that not a lot of people are talking about. Talk about that next. Ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Between dining out online, shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app, it's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spendings in one place, so you stop just managing your money and start building wealth. When I started using Monarch, I realized how much I was spending on food delivery now, and I budget smarter and save more. Instead of juggling multiple apps, you can use Monarch to check your finances, track spending, and even plan long-term goals. Managing money with your partner is smoother than ever. You can track shared and personal accounts, set goals, and stay on the same page without the stress. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONCollege for half off your first year. So Maryland football picks up a big commitment that not a lot of people have talked about, but I do think this is something that is really going to help Maryland football. So we pick up a kicker, Sean O'Hare, who announced he was transferring to Maryland last weekend, which I do think is actually a really big pickup for Maryland. He's from the University of Richmond, so he hasn't played quite the level of football of Big Ten or SEC or anything like that. But to me, that kind of doesn't really matter when we're talking about kicker. I think the only real thing that matters about that, not having played at that level, is kind of just the crowd noise and some of the pressure. I do think kicking, like a lot of it's a mental game. I really believe that. So I think that kind of pressure is something that he might not be used to quite, but still at Richmond, you're still going to have pressure on you to make kicks and do different things, but not the same as playing at like an Ohio State and you're away and Maryland needs this kick. Or playing in a conference game against Wisconsin and they're jumping around and like different things like that, where you're playing home at Richmond, the crowd's not that loud. Like there is a difference there, but I think kicking, it's a lot easier to translate it because it's like you're either making them, you're not, the distance you're hitting from, like it's pretty straight up and linear to how bigger time football is going to be. It's not like, where I'm like this offense lineman that Maryland played D2 for a couple of years. The pass rushers that he's going against aren't going to be playing football, aren't going to be playing NFL, aren't going to be aren't that good, quite frankly. But when they get to the Big Ten, they're going to play some guys that are going to play on Sundays. They're going to play some guys that are all Big Ten. They're going to play some of the better guys in the country. So I think there's a real difference there. But I think kicking, it's more linear. We kind of understand what you're going to become. We kind of know what you are. So I do think this is a good pickup for Maryland. I do think he is a really solid kicker when you just look at the numbers. His first season playing American football, he's actually Irish. He went 12 of 12 on field goals and 9 for 9 on extra points last season as a freshman. So that's pretty awesome. That's something that you don't just do. 12 for 12 on field goals and 9 of 9 on extra points. So he really didn't miss. He also had a 50-yarder and a 47-yarder. So that's what gets me most excited, is he has the leg to kick special, to be able to do some different things kicking the football. It's not just like a guy that went 12 for 12 because he took a bunch of 25-yarders. Like, no, he can boot it a little bit, as we've seen. He has the potential to make a 50-yarder, to make a 47-yarder. So he's made some longer kicks. And kicking consistency can be huge for the Terps. If Maryland is able to get a consistent kicker, if you're able to get a guy that makes most of his field goals, that you can trust at the end of the game to make field goals, you can play things so much differently. You can win 1 or 2 games in the season that you weren't originally going to win. You also can avoid losing a game or 2 that you weren't supposed to lose. There have been so many games that come down to, does the kicker make it or does the kicker miss it? A lot of it comes down to that sometimes, and that's going to be really important. Or is your kicker in range? We're at 52. We need to kick it. There's 3 seconds left. Does our kicker have that range, or do we need to throw a Hail Mary? Like, a lot of it comes down to the kicker. So I do think this is a big pickup for the Terps. He replaces Jack, who was our former kicker, who kind of struggled over the past 2 years, and he opted to leave. And he hasn't done a lot, hasn't been great for us. So I do think picking up a kicker actually really helps the Terps. So we'll see how that ends up coming together. But I do think that's a pickup that will end up helping the Terps. I think that's someone that we kind of needed somebody that can help Maryland basketball football. Excuse me. I've talked about basketball all day, but will help Maryland football moving forward. So I do think that's a big pickup. That's all we have for today. Thank you guys for listening to Locked on Terps. Make sure you guys like and subscribe. We're here every day talking Maryland football and basketball. So thank you guys for listening to Locked on Terps.